My name is David Hale, and this is the story of how the people I trusted most, my wife and my daughter, handed me over to destruction, and how that very betrayal became the fire that forged my freedom. It happened on an ordinary morning at the shooting range. The air was cool, gravel crunched beneath boots, and the smell of gunpowder lingered in the wind. I was focused, steady, lost in the rhythm of training when it all collapsed. A sudden command cut through the air. Drop your weapon. You're under arrest. Before I even lowered my firearm, I felt the cold grip of metal around my wrist. The cuffs snapped tight with a sound that rang louder than the gunshots echoing moments before. No explanation, no pause. Just those words. David Hale, you're under arrest. I stood there, silent. My chest heavy. My eyes calm. I didn't resist. But inside, humiliation pressed harder than their guns. They told me everything in one brutal sentence. Your wife and your daughter reported you. They'll testify against you in court. The words landed like shrapnel, cutting deeper than any wound I'd ever known. They dragged me into the station, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. The walls were cracked. The air smelled of stale coffee and fear. They shoved me into a chair and sneered. One call. One officer mocked. Who could you possibly call now? I dialed. My voice was steady, though my pulse roared in my ears. On the other end, a flat tone replied, "This is a private matter. Handle it yourself." The officers laughed, their voices bouncing off the walls. For them, this was entertainment. For me, it was the opening of a grave. An hour later, the door slammed open. The director of the agency stormed in, fury blazing in his eyes. "Remove those cuffs immediately," he thundered. The room fell silent. But inside, I was already frozen. Because wounds like this don't come from enemies. They come from family. They come from blood. And I knew I had to discover why my wife, why my daughter, had turned my name into poison. The reports were thick, pages stacked with accusations. They painted me as a traitor, illegal transfers, shadowy meetings, ties to foreign agents. Enough evidence to not only destroy my career, but to erase me entirely. I turned every page slowly, each word a knife carving into my skin. The signatures were theirs. Their handwriting. Their details. Too specific, too intimate to be fabricated. This wasn't coercion. This wasn't a mistake. It was intent. I replayed every moment in my head. The way my wife had begun to avoid my gaze at dinner. The way my daughter's laughter had dimmed when I entered the room. Seeds I had ignored now bloomed into a garden of knives. They thought I would crumble. But I didn't. I became quiet. Patient. I started to pull at threads, unraveling their lies one by one. First, the phone records. Calls made in the darkest hours. Not mine, hers. My wife's. Then hotel bookings under false names. Bank accounts with unexplained deposits. Money that stank of betrayal. Not mine, hers. And my daughter. I discovered her messages, filtered through sources I still trusted. Emails exchanged with one of my enemies. She gave them information, my schedule, my vulnerabilities, maps of my movements. The betrayal wasn't clumsy. It was precise, surgical, but they made one mistake. They thought my silence was weakness. They didn't understand that a man can build his strength in silence. That planning in stillness is sharper than any blade. Piece by piece, the truth emerged. It wasn't random. It wasn't personal. It was transactional. My wife had found someone else. Her new lover wasn't just another man. He was a foreign agent. He promised her wealth, safety, a new life across the ocean. She traded loyalty for luxury. My daughter, too young to see the cracks, too old not to understand, became part of it. Whether out of fear, influence, or greed, she signed her father's death warrant with her own hands. To them, I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I was an obstacle. I didn't confront them at home. That house was already ash to me. Instead, I built my case in silence. I gathered every file, every email, every bank statement. I recorded voices. I traced movements. I photographed meetings. By the time I was done, I had a dossier thick enough to choke the lies they had built. And I waited, not for revenge in the shadows, but for the truth to explode under the brightest light of all, the courtroom. The day came. The courtroom was packed, eyes watching, whispers circling like vultures. My wife and daughter stood ready to speak, ready to bury me under their rehearsed lines of betrayal. My wife's face was painted in false sorrow. My daughter's eyes trained in treachery. Before they could open their mouths, I stepped forward. Calm. Silent. I handed the judge the dossier with my own hands. Read this before they speak. The room fell silent. Page after page revealed the truth. Transfers. Photographs. Messages. Audio recordings of my wife whispering secrets to her lover. Gasps rippled through the room. My wife's mask shattered. Her lips trembled with excuses. My daughter's hands shook. Her face drained of color. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I simply said, "You wanted to erase me. But I erased the illusion of you." Their collapse was immediate. Her lover fled. The money evaporated, accounts frozen, assets seized. My wife's name became poison in every circle she once craved. My daughter was dragged through hearings, her future stripped piece by piece until nothing remained. I didn't lift a finger. I didn't need to. Their downfall wasn't my vengeance. It was the natural weight of truth. By the time the verdict was announced, they weren't my accusers anymore. They were the accused. I saw them once, after it was all over, in the hallway outside the courtroom. My wife's voice cracked, desperate. "David, for her sake, forgive." I cut her down with silence sharper than any blade. My daughter's eyes welled with tears, searching for the father she remembered. But that man was gone. In his place stood the man they had forged with betrayal. "Fathers protect," I whispered. "But you chose to burn the bridge." And I walked away. Their cries echoed behind me, but I never looked back. That night, I sat alone in the empty house. A box of photographs lay on the table, faces that once meant home. I didn't burn them. Burning is passion, and passion implies care. I simply closed the lid. They had carved betrayal into my bones. But betrayal, once seen, transforms into irreversible clarity. I no longer belonged to them, and they were already ghosts. They thought their lies would bury me, but it was their truth that became the coffin, and I was the one who nailed it shut. If you've stayed with me through this story, remember this: sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. Sometimes it sets you free. If you want more stories like this, subscribe now, because the next one might just be the truth you've been waiting for. And if you've ever been betrayed, share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it.